Hey everybody, welcome to a special episode of Agma Schwa here, and I am joined by Danny Bate, the author of Why Q Needs You, this new little linguistics book explaining the alphabet and its origins. And obviously Danny can talk a little bit more about that. So my people know who I am generally, so Danny, why don't you tell the world a little bit about who you are, what you do, and how you ended up writing this book?
With great pleasure. Firstly, thank you so much for having me,
For sure.
Ma. I've been loving our interaction so far ever since we first started communicating with each other. And I first started learning things from you right off the bat because I had to, like, I know the word schwa, I know the word schwa extremely well, but Agma? So I learned something. I did not realize that that phonetic symbol had that name. So thanks very much.
Some call it
Um,
that, yes. Some
so
call it
call it that.
that.
It's more comfortable than the sound that it stands for
Yeah,
in isolation for me. So I do appreciate that.
for sure.
So yeah, my name is Danny Bate. I'm a linguist. I like to call myself a public linguist in that I'm committed to sharing my beloved field of linguistics with a broad audience of people. I pursued linguistics at university for many years, so from BA, MPhil, and then PhD finally with the University of Edinburgh. So I get to call myself doctor unless it's a medical emergency, in which case I shut up and keep quiet. And my passion, or maybe the thread of passion throughout all those studies of mine, was the historical linguistics of the languages of the past and how language changes. I don't have an academic job at the moment, despite desperately wanting one. Academia is generally on fire, regardless of country. So I have pivoted to being a full-time public linguist. So far, so good, because I have written this sort of surprise hit, "Why Q Needs You," and that's the journey I'm on right now. So I get to talk to people like yourself.
Very nice, very nice. And I read the book and I love the book and I took several notes as I was
Oh,
reading throughout the book. so
what or
we could
two?
have this conversation. Yes, because
Thank you.
I told you my daytime job. I'm an arborist, right? I have a second channel called AZ Plant Reviews where I review plants that are used in Arizona landscaping and stuff like that. But side job is doing this YouTube channel doing linguistics things. I majored in linguistics at Arizona State University. I haven't gone further than that, but my emphasis was in historical linguistics during my time there, and that kind of got me onto this field, and I've continued nerding out about those subjects ever since. So this book was very fun for me because I already knew a lot of like the basics of like the origin of various letters and the general path that a lot of the letters took over the course of the thousands of years. But I definitely learned a lot, and I love the way that you presented it. And so, out of my various notes, I have some various things that we could potentially talk about that relate to some of the stuff I've done on my channel and otherwise, right? So if we wanna get chatting about a couple of those subjects, I can get started.
Sounds great. Sounds good. I'm pleased to know that you're a gentleman of culture as well, with historical linguistics. And like, I'm like the channel, your channel is just a joy. It's just a joy. I was
Thanks.
watching some of the videos, and conlangers in particular just combine expertise with joy. I can't think of a better word for it. It's just absolutely delighting in the nerdery of language and like savoring grammatical contexts like you might savor a nice wine. It's
Exactly.
really fun to see. So yeah, let's get to it. And thank you so much for engaging with the book so well. I do appreciate what you said there, that you had some idea of the content of the book already. I do want to stress from the outset, it's not like a new piece of research. This is a book for the general public that
Exactly.
presents information that is widely accessible already, widely accessible, but not, shall I say, like universally accessible. It's
Mm-hmm.
something that you absolutely could know, and I could maybe count on some of my readers knowing these things, but not everybody. It's really hit and miss, including within linguistics departments, because of the nature of the field of linguistics, its development from the, shall we say, late 19th century onwards. People slowly kind of coming to realize that we need to separate speech and sign as two modalities of writing, as separate, from writing.
Mm-hmm.
Writing can be really like forgotten. and overlooked by
Exactly.
top linguists.
Mm-hmm.
So amongst the general public and even amongst linguistic experts, I could not count on people knowing this stuff. So it's good to know where you stand, and I hope that your listeners who don't know this stuff, I'm going to introduce it in an accessible and enjoyable way.
Exactly, and it definitely is presented in an accessible and enjoyable way. It's just, each chapter is like a story that goes along the path in a very engaging way that I think anyone of any level of expertise in historical linguistics, from nothing to professor, would definitely enjoy. So I liked it a lot. So yeah, let's get on to the first subject here. So I know around chapter D you were talking about like unseal and chancery hand and stuff like that, right? And that stuff is very interesting. And about probably 3 or 4 years ago at this point, myself and Eternal, who's behind a lot of the stuff on this channel, we did a live stream looking through the Ormulum and various texts that are written in, say, Chancery Hand and Unsealed type texts like that. And basically, it was just a live stream, but the live stream was just essentially a live challenge to see like how much of it we could get to understand within a short period of time, you know. And it is challenging. It is very challenging. I don't know. Have you ever? I mean, you talk about it a lot in the book. Have you like extensively looked over texts from that time period and like read them? Because it's hard. It's hard.
It is. It is hard, and it's a separate skill that requires separate training. I mean, it
Yeah.
has a name as a practice. It's called paleography, reading this old writing, and I do appreciate that it's not something that everybody needs to do to access this stuff.
Yeah.
Especially my background, my PhD background was in syntax, the syntax of the word order of old languages, and very much I was dealing with secondary sources that did all the hard work of reading the text and typed it up into nice legible letters, which I already know. So I have not spent as much time reading the actual direct sources as, say, a paleographer or a historian might, but I have, to a great extent, so I think more than the average human has done. I've looked at these documents, and absolutely, some are easier than others. I find, for example, the scripts, a lot of the manuscripts that are associated with Old English, the Old English period of the language, so that's sort of 450 to 1100 AD. I find a lot of Old English manuscripts pretty easy to write, but then there are stuff from the same period. I have a sort of subspecialism in Old Irish.
Oh yeah.
To me is,
oh yeah.
I'm squinting. I'm just squinting. Going, what?
Yeah.
What is that? And these are traditions of writing that are geographically and genealogically not far away from each other. So it's hard, and I don't think that there are that many shortcuts you can take beyond just getting stuck into the actual documents themselves.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I mean, old Irish in general is just crazy. Like, Eternal and I always say to each other, like, if you ever think your conlang's not realistic, just remember that old Irish existed, and you're good to go.
Yeah, this is correct.
It's
I would only
crazy.
just add the proviso that if you want to make your conlang feel as crazy as old Irish, have it die. Have it like die out as a
Exactly.
thing, because Old Irish is there's this great theory or kind of overview with Old Irish that the real experts have, which is that basically, as a linguistic system, it was so complicated even for its native speakers that it quickly became something else.
That it collapsed
which,
into
collapsed as a system, and it naturally sort of internal pressures led it to become what we now recognize as modern Irish, which is very much a learnable, living language. But I just love the idea that Old Irish was just too mad for its own good.
Exactly. No, I love it. But yeah, back on like the chancery hand and stuff like that, right? We were talking in the book. You talk about the various registers of symbols used, known as like unseals. They like the sort of essentially like middle cases used in various letters and stuff like that. And there's been various videos. I don't know if you watched the videos I recommended to you, the pixel guy who made those videos on making like the uppest case and the lowest case and stuff like that. But he essentially reinvented essentially what Unseal was doing back then, but in his own like flavor. And I think that's kind of interesting because nowadays, since we type everything, we kind of just type. There's an uppercase and a lowercase, but there's also like bold and italics and strike through and things that we do. And so I guess my idea, my kind of thought when I was thinking about that kind of stuff is that today in age, are those things, number one, like, are things like italics, bold, underscore, strike through kind of like different cases of writing? Or do you think that there would be some benefit to adding in some other kind of middle case to make text more legible for people? Or do you think it's good how it is?
A lot of interesting thoughts. It's superbly put. I have a lot of thoughts about this. Not all of them, perhaps the majority, not coherent and
That's fine.
verbalizable. because what's going on here is with so much in language and the development of language, you've got a two-part process. You have the actual element of language, be it a single letter, be it a single sound, it could be a whole word, could be a script. You've got the actual aspect of language itself changing. And then, secondarily, you've got people recognizing that it has changed and become something else. And I mentioned that at the outset as a sort of heuristic for thinking about these things, that so much in the history of writing is extraordinarily gradual, granular. It takes a very long amount of time for people to realize that actually now we're dealing with something different. We're dealing with, say, for example, majuscule and minuscule letters, what we now recognize as upper and lower case. The minuscule letters are simpler, they're less complex than the older ones. Because of their origins, they emerge as the kind of cursive Roman writing that makes them more fluid to write, better suited for private documents in the Roman Empire, as opposed to, say, grand inscriptions for everybody to read. For those, you keep the old uppercase letters. And the two gradually separate out until, I don't know, I'm not aware of anything earlier than the 9th century, so long after the two systems are now in place, where people are consciously writing about these different ways of using the letters and the ways that the letters look and assigning them to certain contexts. And then consequently this endures through the Middle Ages. We reach the early modern period and get the printing press, where absolutely people recognize that you have upper and lower case. They're literally cases containing movable type for your printing press. And people recognize that you do need an uppercase A and a lowercase a, and these are separate symbols. This system is absolutely is normal. Is normal, but I just don't think it's inevitable for all sorts of reasons. Today, the uppercase letters are kind of on the back foot. The besieged ones, the ones that actually numerically they're not the most common. They're not the most common according to whatever piece of text you happen to look at. And if we started, as some people already do in certain contexts online, so to drop a lot of the main uses for the capital letters, say at the beginning of every sentence, at the beginning of every proper noun, then we really might see them retreat, and we'd be left with only the lowercase letters. I can see that happening. I can't see a middle case emerging at the moment, not because there couldn't be a use for it. We could absolutely find a use for it. We could find a use for it for, like, I don't know, medium volume voice or something like that. And we use the middle case for that, and we use lowercase letters for whispering, and we use uppercase letters for shouting, as we already do, although that's actually not a very old practice of using the capital letters. So there's definitely a reason why we could have more cases emerging. I think actually the problem is actually happening, it's at the tip of your fingers. We're not writing as much. And we are not involved in the creation of new letter shapes to the same way that people used to be. And because of that, I can't see a new, parallel set of letters emerging. But yeah, as I say, complex thoughts.
Yeah, indeed. And so then the thought is, right? So since textual speech is getting more common and all that, I've also noticed very particular usage of like say on Discord and things like that, like special uses of italics for emphasis, special uses of bold for extra emphasis, things like that. Now, are italics and bold technically cases, or do you think they not count so much?
Okay, I'm going to try and put this into words. I would say they're semi cases.
There you go.
They're
Yeah.
on their way here. They're on their way. They're on their way in that I recognize that they are being used in different contexts, and that has a function. That is absolutely backed up by the history of the upper and lower cases that we recognize. That they are used in certain ways. I think to begin with, they're in medieval manuscripts. It's really the uppercase letters are for titles and for the initial opening sections of texts, maybe occasionally for emphasis or for the beginning of a paragraph. You do see that as well. So sure, there are linguistic contexts in which we use bold and italics, and I can see that making them sort of parallel to cases. I would just say it's because they're still in the area of, say, complementary features of the existing cases, something that we augment the two cases with.
Yeah, they're not required or implied to have a particular meaning at this point. They could at some point, but not right now. Exactly.
Exactly that. But I think about this a lot, and I'm more than happy to say that we've got these two cases at the top of the pyramid that are absolutely recognized by everybody, but then all sorts of like variable writing in the surface where the letters are really, our eyes are dealing with a huge amount of variation in the symbols that it threatens to become different cases. I mean, for example, we are totally happy to deal with, say, a lowercase a that has no hook at the top and a lowercase a that has the hook, or the G that has the extra loopy bit. That's I think Times New Roman has that, the very loopy G that is bordering on an 8. And we are so happy to deal with great variation. We just lump it together under one character. We have this idea of a kind of grapheme in our head that is capable of so many different ways of expression, in print or handwriting, of course, because handwriting is hugely divergent. So we just group them together under one symbols. If these different various forms started to be used in so many different contexts and so many different ways that we started to think about them as separate symbols, then we might have a new case emerging.
Exactly. So maybe someday, if meaning gets more and more associated with those things, it has to be universal though, or at least widely accepted amongst populace. So,
Exactly. Yes, consensus.
Exactly.
It's like Superman or the Incredibles putting on the mask.
Exactly. I don't know when exactly I got these glasses, but it's been my YouTube uniform for like 3+ years at this point. I've just rolled with it. Like when people draw like fan art, it's always got the glasses on. I was like, I have to at this point.
People draw fan art of you. My God,
surprisingly often. The Discord server is very entertaining.
Hi to the Discord server. Do your worst with me if you want to.
Yeah, there you go.
Hi.
It's inevitable now. It's inevitable. Oh my gosh. Anyway, so where we left off, we were essentially talking about like the variation in like in graphemes and things that can still be considered like the same letter and stuff, right? And I don't know if you saw it, but my most popular video of all time is called Heterography: How to Destroy the Alphabet, which is all about looking at like the most basic graphemic qualities that make a letter definable as what it is to the average reader, and then breaking it on purpose and finding a way to make every letter mistakable with at least one other letter. And it was a very, very fun video that I made there. I had a good time with it. I essentially reverted it to like the pixelated kind of text of Minecraft, right? Because there's a very limited number of pixels. I forgot the exact number. It was like 30 total pixels or something. and yet Minecraft is able to properly distinguish every letter. And so I used Minecraft's basic font to break apart every letter until it's mistakable with at least one other letter. And it was a good time. It was a good time making it just
Excellent.
nonsense.
Because you can kind of get down to the granular level and see when our intuition or our recognition breaks, right?
Exactly, exactly. Like the second you
Cool.
can't tell whether something's like a G or a C anymore. There's a certain point of just like chipping
Mhm.
away at a capital G until suddenly you can't tell whether it's a capital G or a capital C anymore. Things like that.
Mm.
So we're talking about vowels. And there are many semi vowels in English, as well as some letters that are typically consonants in English, but are used as vowels in other languages, right? An example would be like the W being used in like a couple Welsh loan words as a vowel, right? And so,
Mm.
in school we were taught the vowels as like A, E, I, O, U, and sometimes Y. When I was little, that always annoyed me because even when I was like 7 years old, I was like, well, what about like R? Like R is sometimes a vowel, right? And and I got into a fight with my first grade teacher about that.
Hmm.
I didn't have the argument fully formed in my head because I was like 6 years old. But if you had to choose a candidate for another sometimes vowel other than Y, well, what would be your
Mm.
choice? What would be your choice of another letter to be the sometimes vowel?
Nice. Very nice. Yeah, it's a really good question, and I do appreciate that people are having this conversation. That we talk about five vowels, but really that the last time that was true. I mean, the history of English was quite a while ago. English has
Exactly.
so many vowels. Like, and
Yep.
I'm very keen to kind of fly the flag for English as both normal and odd. It's just a language at the end of the day, so it has its fair share of quirks. One of which is like our baffling array of vowels that we
Right.
have in English
Right.
today. Like
Yeah.
so many, and an explosion of vowels over the history of modern English. If you wind back the clock to Middle English, it's far fewer. So I love that people are now talking about this with a bit more of a critical eye. I think it's going to be no surprises from me in terms of which letters I would pick. The three, and I would say it's R, L, and W
Yep.
would be the ones that I would pick. If Y is already in that group, then the ones that I would add. So, for example, there is this idea of, say, of Welsh. People in Britain who aren't Welsh and don't speak Welsh might balk at the idea of Welsh treats W as a vowel. And
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, well, of course I do. It's W. You can't be too surprised by that.
Yeah. What a
It
shock.
stands for the sound ooh. Like,
Right.
what a shock. So that's the but. And I would say that English has in lots of I'm reaching for a better word than marginal, but lots of perhaps underappreciated contexts uses W also as a vowel letter.
Mm-hmm.
For example, in certain diphthongs, in a
Yep.
word like, I don't know, blow,
Yep.
that O sound is spelled OW. That is not intentional, for want of a better word. That's really that there is this sort of half-hearted habit in medieval writing to use a W at the end of a word. You could have used a U. We have plenty of examples of spelling a word like blow with just a U at the end instead, but W. Perhaps because at the end of a word, if a vowel came next, it sounded a bit more like a consonant, like a w sound. So blow, I
Mm-hmm.
don't know, the winds do blow and do something else.
Yeah. Yeah.
Perhaps also because of the business of writing, that it was more pleasant to finish a word like blow or throw with a kind of final flick, a swish.
Exactly.
That's so often the case that the way that we spell is influenced by just how people liked to write with quills and parchment back in the day.
Oh yeah.
So sometimes there are lots of cases where it's not acting as a semi-vowel, it's acting as a vowel within a diphthong, and I think that's why
Exactly.
W makes the cut. R and L, no surprises there. These, ever since the alphabet is set up, they are letters assigned to two highly resonant sounds. These are very resonant sounds, by which resonance is a complicated phonetic concept, but I mean, I don't mean that as in like it's really hard to understand. It's like nobody understands it, but they're very loud sounds in general. R and L, of course, in modern English, R, if you speak French or German as well. So these are very resonant sounds that can function as vowels or vowel-like things. So my local language where I live is Czech. R and L are just vowel letters.
Yeah, exactly.
No one really calls them vowels, but they kind of function as vowels. As in a word like, I know, krk is your neck, or vlk is a wolf in Czech. So these are functioning as the nucleus of the syllable. These are functioning like vowels. But also in languages that don't allow that kind of specific, very narrow usage, they can nonetheless interact with vowels, and they can become vowel-like sounds within a word. They can cooperate. So, for example, think of all the words that have a kind of coda R in English today, where the R comes at the end of a syllable or the end of a word. A word like car, the A and the R, regardless of dialect, are cooperating on the pronunciation of the word. It's kind of that the two symbols are spelling one vowel, especially for non-rhotic English speakers like me, where A, R is car, a long vowel. Take out the R, it's ka or K. Likewise, bird. If you take out the R, you get bid. So they are cooperating as one, even for rhotic English accents, like over in the United States and Canada, with the exception of Boston. I always have to give a little shout out to Boston because there's quite a few of them, so I don't want to make anybody mad. With the exception, with that exception out of the way, even still, the actual R sound, the sound that is represented by R in these words, is sort of a kind of vowel or approximate, maybe with the tip of the tongue, maybe with the back of the tongue. Phoneticians are quite in conflict about what the R in a rhotic word like car or bird actually is. But nonetheless, it's not this kind of airflow restrictive sound that a T or a P might be. If it isn't approaching a vowel, I don't know what it is. So yeah, WLR, those are my three.
Beautiful. And that is a much more intelligent explanation of what my 6-year-old self it was screaming to my first grade teacher about. Should show this to her. There you go. Exactly.
I mean, I have a very dear friend who is a professional, phonetician. She documents and records endangered languages and looks at the pronunciation, the production of sounds. And I was just messaging her when I was writing the book, saying, like, can you just quickly tell me what actually is the R sound in rhotic English? What actually is that sound towards the end of a word? And she said, no, I cannot quickly tell you.
Yeah, there's no quick way to describe it. There's no quick way to describe it. But I love American English's R colored sounds. Those are my favorite. I did like a tier list of phonemes at one point. And I think I put like the R colored Schwa as like my number one favorite favorite language sound of all time. I love it. It's
okay. Why then aren't you Unger? Why not add it in to your name?
It wouldn't be as catchy. It would be a little bit less catchy, wouldn't it? And there is another channel called Schwa, which is like the R colored Schwa. And shout out to Schwa, love Schwa. But yeah, so that one's already taken. But yeah, no, I love it, and I love including like nucleic L's and R's and things and conlangs and things. The people who know the languages I've made will know that I have a preponderance of nucleic R's in my languages. It's at this point it's like a bad habit that I need to break off of because I love it so much.
It's just good taste.
Exactly. There you go.
And also, and perfectly manageable for. I mean, I'm assuming you're a native English speaker. It's very English at the end of the day. I mean, not so much nucleic R, but a nucleic L. When I get guests, I get a lot of comments from people who face to face with the Czech language for the first time, and they'll say like, "Oh, it's all consonants." Like, no, it's not. they're just honest in spelling about what their vowels and consonants actually are. They're just kind of more honest than English, because I'm sorry, what is the vowel in the second syllable of bottle or bottle? If you're American,
Yep,
what is the
bottle.
vowel? It's an L.
Exactly.
And as soon as I throw that, I confront them politely and in a friendly way. As soon as I confront them with this quality of English, Czech doesn't seem so odd or
Right?
scary.
Exactly. Bottle, battle, collaborate, right? Like words like that.
Collaborate. Yes, that's a good one.
Exactly.
Collaborate.
Right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
Yep.
I love it. I love it. Speaking of favorites and things, I made a video long ago that was just titled "I Hate the Letter G," where I just ranted for about 5 minutes about why I think specifically the lowercase g is my least favorite letter. I figured, and I feel a little less strongly about it
Continue.
today, right? But my argument is essentially that the chaotic variations of the lowercase g make it stand out against pretty much all the other letters in the English Latin alphabet in a way that I found displeasing, and I didn't like using the letter G in languages I was making. I feel less strongly about it today. I wouldn't say I hate the letter G, specifically lowercase g, but it is still probably my least favorite amongst the batch. So I was wondering, do you have a least favorite? Well, what is your least favorite letter, uppercase or lowercase?
Wow, that's a good one. What is my least favorite? Do you know, people don't tend to ask me this. They say, well, what's your favorite letter? And I have to very polite and try to make myself more kind of sound less vanilla than the fact that in the history of the alphabet, my favorite letter is A,
Yeah.
which sounds like the most basic answer I can give, but I'm just a big fan. In general, I love its work. I love what it represents. But my least favorites, gosh, I'm sort of running through them in my head right now. Yeah, he's put that. I'm struggling to think about this. I mean, Q is a bit. It's been redundant for thousands of years.
True.
We
True.
we could get rid of it. But beyond that, I don't. I'm not a massive fan of how many of the lowercase letters are fundamentally the same, and they are only distinguishable via their ascender or descender. So I'm
True.
thinking of D, B, P, and Q,
Mm-hmm.
in that they're
Mm-hmm.
essentially just a circle with a single kind of leg. I don't like that so much. I think for the business of writing, I
Yeah.
would much rather that the letters were kept more separate. And in addition to that, not a fan of lowercase r. It gets lost
Mm-hmm.
in writing all too easily, and
Yeah.
in a very interesting way, in a way that I guess with my sort of linguist or graphologist's hat on, I do find very interesting how the absolute minuscule, we're talking a minute flick or slight downstroke, means
Mm-hmm.
that you can tell the difference between a lowercase r from me and some other letter, like, I don't know, N or I. I know my eyes are. I always dot my eyes, but I join the dot up in ways like it's really, if you really stare at your own handwriting, especially if you write often and at great
Mm-hmm.
speed, stare at the letters and go, I'm able to read this. This this is just lines. This is just ink.
Right.
Very quickly you start to sort of lose the trees for the wood. I don't know really what the right metaphor is in this case, but
Yo.
it does nonetheless interest me how there is a tiny bend in my lowercase r that I am able to recognize that as an r as opposed to something else, and that bend is so often lost
Yup.
in that I will draw an R from my perspective, and I'll do stalk fine, and I won't do the dip. I'll just go straight up in some sort of unrecognizable letter. It really
Some
explains a lot about how we struggle to read each other's handwriting.
Yeah, exactly. And I have paid a lot of attention to my handwriting. In fact, when I was in high school, I went through a conscious effort to restart my handwriting because I didn't like the way it looked. And I ended up
Mm.
completely purging the lowercase q. Like I just write a small capital Q for lowercase q now. Like that's
All right.
that's been my sole method for like over 10 years at this point. And I like it because I was never able to get a pleasant looking lowercase q out of my handwriting, even after I was like going through such a conscious effort to like make my handwriting look more appealing. So I just decided the most pleasing way to go forward was just to make a small capital Q and just have that be my lowercase q. So I've just kind of moved forward that way.
Yeah, no, that's so distinctive. I love that. I love the use of choice that you can choose. You literally can
Right,
choose
right,
to do that.
yeah.
And I love the variation in that it's the sort of thing that might end up in a history book someday, in a paleography
Yeah.
history book, as
The
examples from the year of our Lord 2026.
yeah.
This guy in Arizona had this really distinctive script, and it kind of took off.
Yeah, the day lowercase q died, 2020 Arizona is when it began. This goodbye
Yeah.
lowercase q. Who knows? It could happen.
Let's bring it on. Let's bring it on.
Exactly.
You
I
know,
mean,
I'm all in favor of this.
I wasn't the first. I got the idea from my math teacher, my sophomore year of high school. So shout out to her for beginning the process.
I
Yeah.
love that. People should do this. People should, yeah, make your handwriting distinctive. You don't
Yeah.
need any encouragement from me, but yeah,
Exactly.
fun.
And if people read my comic, like they'll see that lowercase q. The letter q comes up a lot in my language that my comic is written in Arodjun, and you'll see that the lowercase q is just a small uppercase q.
Yeah,
Yeah. But anyway, yeah,
your signature. Very cool.
for
Very,
sure.
yeah, I can't claim to any sort of deliberate changes like that, but I had really bad handwriting at school, and I think partly it was actually deliberate in that I was trying to reforge myself and my handwriting. It looked awful, but I just kept writing, and actually. By accident, it was only when I was at university that I handed something in that was handwritten, and somebody said that I had nice handwriting. And to this day, I've been kind of writing that
Right?
way. I take great pride in my handwriting.
Isn't that
My
awesome?
lowercase f's are works of art. I stand by this.
Beautiful.
I know
Beautiful.
I am blowing my own trumpet here, but seriously, they are. It's like a bow. It's like a bow that you might tie your shoelaces with,
Very
and it's sort of
nice.
upward flip like that. And when I think
Very
about
nice.
the letters forerunners, when I think about capital F in, I don't know, the square capitals of ancient Rome, or the digamma of ancient Greece,
Yeah.
the forerunner of F, it looks absolutely nothing like it.
Right?
It's an F. It's still an F.
Exactly. Exactly. You've advanced upon the system.
Oh, I think so.
Indeed, indeed. No, I like it. And so then in terms of letters as well, there's a few extinct letters that Old and Middle English used, right? Ash, thorn, ev, win. Do you have a favorite amongst those? One you think we should bring back, or just one that you like a lot?
Ooh, I mean, everybody who studies medieval languages has a penchant for thorn.
Uh-huh.
It looks cool. It's kind of very typical. I wouldn't say that I'm a big. I'm a proposer of bringing thorn back. I think let's just not also forget what we have achieved with the system of H, like TH, but also SH, CH, PH, things like that. H is a kind of default consonant combiner, and it works. So TH. Okay, fine. Yes, you could claim that we'd be saving on a bit of ink and a bit of space by bringing back Thorn, but I don't know. Ultimately, also TH is perfectly in harmony with what English writers have decided on for that system. Ash, I mean, English needs more vowel letters, so
Yeah.
I can definitely envision a world where we bring back Ash. I don't particularly know where we'd use it because. Oh no, we'd use it for a short A. We'd use it for kind of for the short A sound. I can see that happening for a lot of dialects of English. The short A sound is extremely different to the long A sound or the long R sound. So yeah, sure, we could always do with more vowel letters around the place.
Exactly.
But for the one that I might bring back, and I love to see, and perhaps might be the simplest to integrate, would be win.
I
So the letter for
agree.
W.
That's what I was going to
Yeah.
say, is win. I
It
love
would be
win.
win.
Mm-hmm.
Let's bring it back. I mean,
Yes.
frankly, W, let's save some space. It's a consonant letter. Let's just bring back win. I
Exactly.
think it looks good. I think, speaking from experience, as somebody who writes in Old English from time to time, I think it's okay to write at speed. Yes, it's fairly similar to a P, but you can, writing at speed, you can distinguish a win from a P. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, like, when I was reading the Ormulum, I had a hard time distinguishing a whim from a p at times, right? But modern day, when no one's, when, if you're writing it in print, like a print win would do just fine, you know? It would be beautiful. It would be beautiful. It saves space. Look more pleasant than a W, in my humble opinion. Um, and yeah,
It's win-win.
exact win-win. Ah, I see what you did there. Oh, got him.
What a zinger. Sorry. If people know my work, if people have read my stuff, that's perfectly in harmony. Just drop in a dad joke from time to time.
There
Not
you
even
go.
a dad. Just comes naturally.
Born with it. It's innate in you.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. So, next question kind of pivots to a different sort of subject, and that is on the way that you wrote the book itself, right? And now, since it's intended to be sort of like an introduction to like the story of letters and like the sounds associated with them, right? And there's many times where you have the classic linguistic like phoneme brackets, like the slashes, things like that. And it's not always in there, and so I'm just wondering because it kind of I've been dealing with phoneme and allophone brackets and all kinds of stuff for years and years, but I'm just wondering, did you have like a particular strategy in mind in introducing the slashes in the book while you're writing it, or did it just kind of happen?
Yes, I really like and embrace this question because I've thought about this a lot. I'm engaged in the business of public linguistics, i.e., I am engaged in providing content for a broad audience of
Mm-hmm.
people who may not know certain things, and I need to get them on side. I can't lose them as a reader. And for that, I'm always thinking and adjusting the way that I present certain linguistic concepts. I put in the outset of the book, I'm not going to shy away from these concepts. There's no reason why, as a total novice, you can't understand these things. They just need to be introduced properly. And going along with that, I absolutely, essentially for this book, I needed to introduce the idea that sounds are separate from speech.
Yep.
I don't mean to patronize anybody here, but I think a lot of people muddle these two things up in common conception, and that's fine. It just works. I mean, I always give the example from the UK, which I know much better than the USA. In the UK, people talk about accents of English that drop their H's. No, they don't. They drop the sound that H represents, but they
Uh-huh.
don't drop the letter. And
Exactly.
I'm not being pedantic here. It's super important to
Yep.
separate out these two ways of doing language. So it became very important to me and very obvious to me very quickly that I was going to have to include the IPA. There's just no way around it. This book talks about sounds so often, sometimes talking about languages that like prehistoric languages that have no writing system. So I need to be able to talk about the sounds in isolation. I just decided to do it very sparingly, sticking in particular to the IPA symbols that are actually very intuitive for European readers because they are based on European languages. So the symbol that looks like a lowercase b is the sound that B usually stands for in most European languages. And of course, I could say in English, but
Yeah.
actually English consonants are kind of changing and becoming something else, but that's
Uh-huh.
a different matter. Let's say French and Spanish, or French is a good example. It's a B sound. It's a
Yeah.
voiced B sound. A lot of the time I have to include the symbol for Y, which is a J, and that catches some English readers out. But I explain these things. I use example words if I think the reader is going to get lost. It's an art, not a science. It's all about trying to anticipate some sort of mythical average reader's abilities and patience, and occasionally using the IPA, using it sparingly, and other times using example words or using capital letters and saying things like the P sound,
Yeah.
as in P, capital P
Yeah.
hyphen
Yeah.
sound, by which I mean P.
Yeah. Exactly.
Aspirated doesn't matter. Very, very hard thing to do and to write about. I made a rod for my own back in this, in that it was hard to write, it was hard then to rewrite. I'd come back and realize, oh, that doesn't work in every accent of English, so I might have to
Yeah.
kind of come up with another example word. The one that really sticks in my memory is, I'm just writing about ancient Greek, I'm having a good time writing chapter O of the book, and I'm talking about omega and how omega, I think in the classical language, it's separate in vowel quality from omicron. One is an o, and I think the other one is more like an or sound. And I put the IPA or sound in the two slashes, and then in brackets immediately afterwards, I put as in the word law, which works for my English.
I think I took a note on this.
Rewriting. Yeah. Rewriting. I think I caught it once or twice, but often I don't. And occasionally I put like in my English or in British English. It is very difficult to write about. It's an art, not a science, a lot of mental anguish, but I think it's all in a good cause. I think I often read other popular linguistics books. I review them as well. And for the people who avoid the IPA, they're making it worse. I'm sorry that you're making it worse for yourself. I have a couple of books that I've reviewed. I mean no disrespect, but by avoiding a concrete way, a heuristic for signposting that you are talking about sounds right now, as opposed to letters, and if you don't embrace, say, the slashes or the square brackets, doesn't matter, readers will be fine with either, you are making it worse. And there are books where I'm like, I'm kind of confused what you're talking about right now. Are you talking about the letter? Are you talking about the sound?
Yep.
So
I 100%
that's
agree.
the choice I'm going with.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you.
100%.
Not an easy decision or an easy practice. So
yeah.
For the book writers out there, bear this in mind.
Yep. I mean, it took me until like chapter 8 or something to even realize how kind of seamlessly you incorporated the, like, just calling them like A sounds, B sounds, whatever, with like actual phoneme brackets. And then I started paying attention to it throughout the rest of the book. And there were a few times where you mentioned like, oh, this thing's pronounced like this or whatever. And if it was like a British pronunciation, I think I would like put a note in here and I would just say British moment. And then that was my note in there. Yeah.
It was always going to happen.
And on the IPA, it's very important. There's the local tribe near me, the Yavapai. They had one main grammar book. It's an extremely endangered language. It's like the southeastern dialect of Yavapai. There's only like 30-something speakers left, and so I bought its grammar book because I was like, I'd like to learn more about this. And they didn't use IPA at all, and there's many examples of sounds that are written out in that book as in the word blank without actually using any IPA, and some of it was kind of vague, and I'm like, that's a shame. Like there really does need to be like concrete ways. The IPA is like a perfect way to represent like concrete sounds, even as like the pronunciations of our words are going to keep changing. But, like, if we at least keep using something like the IPA, there'll be some concrete way of having, like, specific sounds preserved in time, at any given point, Yeah. Stuff like that.
Simply that. And also just people who are familiar with these letters because of a certain language and its way of using those letters will bring that pronunciation and that language to the new language, to the endangered language even, and just assume that, I don't know, I can't think of an example. The H, it's just pronounced as they would expect it to be, and you'll end up with a bad pronunciation.
Yeah,
not accurate.
There's a lot of ways an H could be pronounced depending on where you are and what alphabet you're looking at, things like that. So exactly. Yes. So very important. Highly recommend IPA. I think everyone should learn IPA. Honestly, in my humble opinion. But yeah, speaking of sounds and sound changes, I can move on to the next question, which is about the many dialects of English, right? So you live in a Slavic country, and many of these Slavic countries, the language they speak sounds very similar when you cross borders, but once you cross those borders, they'll call them very passionately different languages. even though they're very highly mutually intelligible. And so I was wondering, in terms of the many, many very divergent dialects of English throughout the world, how close do you think we are to just like kind of throwing in the towel and calling it an Anglic language family? Or what do you think it would take? Do you think it would take like country specific spelling reforms and then it's just kind of done after that? Or what do you think it would take for us to acknowledge the Englishes as different languages and not just different dialects?
It would take the world changing.
Yeah.
It would
Yeah.
take a radically different world with a different set of identities, a different kind of geopolitical situation that would foster those new identities as well. It would take somebody in Australia not feeling any connection, of course, debated how much Australians feel a connection to the UK, but no connection whatsoever. This could be a matter of deliberate choice or just simply the passing of time as the old connections to empire, colonialism, the Commonwealth make those bonds weaker and weaker, and the language becomes something else, and the identity that goes along with that language becomes something else imperceptually,
Right.
gradually. Like it's such a slow process that could perhaps be sped up by some sort of big break. But for the time being, people are content to just call English English. That's good.
Yeah.
But they are not committed to alternative or new identities enough to start calling their kind of English something else. It's a kind of two-way street or a two-way process. English needs to retreat, and some other identity tied up with that local usage needs to advance. The example I always reach for is Latin.
Yeah.
It's never going to be a perfect parallel, but you do have the Romance languages which come to the surface, are associated with other terms. They might call themselves something like Frankish or Hispanic, or they might call themselves Romance, the language of the Romans.
Yep.
And they emerge. And I said this at the outset, it's a two-part process.
Yep.
Firstly, Latin changes and fragments and diversifies. And secondly, people recognize that it has diversified.
Exactly.
Arguably, in the case of French, that's kind of only happening in maybe the 9th century. So a little bit later.
Took a long time.
It's a long period of time. It's a long period of time for that recognition and for the circumstances for that to be there, for that recognition to occur. I can't see that happening anytime soon. And of course, one of the things with the first element of that change, which is the language itself changing, many aspects of English are not changing, which is spelling. We have this standard spelling system, which is kind of keeping us communicating in the medium of writing and reading, but it's also keeping a bit of a leash. People not moving too far. Speech is not going off in wildly different directions. And so for as long as we're using the standard spelling, this will prop up the illusion's a strong word, the impression of English as a unified language. But if standard spelling were to fragment, then wow, I really feel we would see an acceleration of people embracing languages in the same way that we talk about Scandinavian languages or Slavic languages. But this needs to be in tandem with geopolitics and technology and whatever the current state of the world is. I mean, there's an old kind of, not old, and it's a kind of bit of wisdom from linguistics. I think it's Peter Trudgill, the social linguist, who says this. Yeah. Trudgill? Never know how.
I have
variation
no
in his
name. Yeah, one of those.
But he's an English sociolinguist. I think it's Trudgill. He says, language is linguistic, languages are political. And you need the linguistic and the political to start talking about different languages.
Indeed. Yeah, because I know you mention, like, a couple times in the book, like, the prospect of spelling reforms, but at the end of the day, like... Yeah. There's no way at this point to properly, except maybe for that instance of using like the ash symbol for like cat and stuff like that. But even then, that wouldn't be universal across all of the English dialects that exist over the world. So it's like any changes that would be attempted to be made it would have to exclude various parts of it. There'd be no way to introduce a universal spelling form, even if it like mandatorily put those spelling changes on like every iPhone in the world or whatever. At this point, like I feel like you're kind of locked in with the historical spellings for the sake of keeping the Englishes communicable throughout the world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And even as some sort of, we may not realize it, and I hope this is not overreaching, but I think it even works as a kind of common denominator. If you, and maybe I'm not able to consider everything that's relevant, but for a lot of things, standard English spelling is the ancestor, or it represents the ancestor of a lot of English, i.e., it represents late medieval Southern British English. That's what it's bound up in. And this is the standard or the heavy influencer of so many of the different kinds of English that we have today. And it's still, because of that status, ends up being a kind of common denominator. If you were to create speech that is able to satisfy everyone, or at least satisfy all the possible sounds and relations between sounds, if fresh, you'd end up with something that's not a million miles away from standard spelling. Like take, for example, there are not all kinds of English have undergone the wine merger, where the sounds w and wh merge into one. So they absolutely have for me, they have for most Americans, but you find people who might say whine, as in a dog whines, or whether or not, what and where. I think the YouTuber Jackson Crawford is a pretty prominent example.
He lives in like Idaho. Yeah.
He has gone on record about why he doesn't have the wine merger, and it's very interesting. It's quite personal to him. But okay, fine. Instantly, we can't, if we are trying to satisfy all kinds of English, we can't spell those sounds the same. So we end up keeping the WH.
Right.
That is irrelevant for my English, but not irrelevant for everybody's English. And weirdly, especially if you include things that are on the fringes of English, something like Scots in Scotland, which very debated whether it's a separate language or a dialect of English. I'm happy to call it a language. But even if you say include Scots, then you're going to want to include all the GHs still. It's a lot. And weirdly, you kind of end up back where you started. I don't think I'm 100% right in this, but it's something to think about, of like what the true common denominator of English speech would look like in spelling.
No, I totally agree. I ask these questions because in the conlang community, especially a few years ago, there was a whole obsession with making like auxlangs, or making spelling reforms for English. Auxlang being like auxiliary languages, like languages to like bridge gaps between different linguistic groups and things like that, and also just to generally make spelling reforms for English. And people were making like all these different like spelling reforms for English, but like you could kind of tell that they were all based on specific Englishes. And so that I feel like that kind of movement just kind of died down. But for a few years back in the 2010s, there were tons of conlangers and neographers and people in various branches of the online community trying to come up with like what they thought was like the perfect new version of English spelling. And I still see YouTube videos pop up about it every now and then, and it's always like, you're never gonna get universal with it, It's never, you're never gonna get universal with it. So I like what we have now, honestly.
It's a great effort. I must not be. I would hate to be dismissive about it. I don't want to seem dismissive.
They're fun projects. They're really fun projects.
Go forth.
Yeah.
Do it. Yeah. Absolutely do it. But you might end up realizing that the orthography you've created is a mirror for your own accent.
Exactly.
You've forgotten somebody's. Like, it gets so hard. Trust me, it gets so hard to consider all of English to keep it in your grasp. You always forget something, and then you go and write a book about it. And trust me, I am a pedantic writer. I have never let a sentence leave my pen or my word processor without being pretty confident that I backed this up with, science and maths, well, not maths, but like, facts. And then a book gets published, and then my dear readers let me know what I've missed and how their accent has been overlooked.
And you'll hear it.
I just want to say, like, Yeah, please just consider how hard it is to write about all English
Yeah,
accurately nowadays. It's
exactly.
verging on impossible. Yeah.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay.
So a lot of conlangers, or will at least consider themselves neographers, right? They're always making new writing systems and things like that. And after
Hmm.
studying the history of the Latin alphabet and alphabets all descended from like the Egyptian hieroglyphs and Proto-Semitic alphabets and such. Um, if you were trying to give advice to a conlanger, trying to make a realistic alphabet or a realistic neography of any kind, well, what would be your first like sort of recommendation? Well, what would you say to do to make it realistic?
Nice. Yeah, great question. Um, I would say that the big picture, so I consider myself quite comfortable talking about lots of different writing systems, so I am able to adopt a vaguely global perspective
Nice.
on these things. I don't just write about our alphabet,
Yeah.
which is just one tradition of writing. Um, and I would say if you wanted to make it accurate to human history thus far, uh, with the invention of writing, think about the phonetic or phonological, phonotactic, morphological properties of your language. What have you created as a spoken thing, as a spoken entity? What are its hallmarks that the inventors of the system would pick up on? And you say, aha, we're going to base our writing system on something, some aspect of our language, and we are going to. This is primary, right? So let me give some examples. In the history of our alphabet, to begin with, it's all about consonants. Consonants are the only things being written down. I am not clear whether, like, to what extent this is an active choice.
Yeah.
It because like Egyptian writing, that is our alphabet is kind of a departure from, but there's sort of the answer. Egyptian writing is also representing consonants. It doesn't
Yeah.
represent vowels.
Yeah. Exactly.
But nonetheless, active or passive, the earliest alphabetical writing that we have is purely for consonants, and this is absolutely still to be found in descendant languages that are writing systems like Hebrew and Arabic. They, of course, have their ways of writing down vowels, but it's kind of secondary. They're secondary inventions.
Yeah.
Why? Why does this work? Because Semitic speech at that time has loads of consonants. I think Proto-Semitic, the common ancestor, is reconstructed for about 30, 28, 29, 30 consonant phonemes, and vowels like 3 or 6, like
Yeah.
long and short, depending
Yeah.
on how you want to count them. That's a huge disparity or a different kind of ratio for vowels to consonants. So of course you're going to privilege consonants in your writing system. So that's one example of how think about the salient features that writers are going to pick up on and think, well, we're going to write down this. You want it's nobody. I really struggle. Okay, I'm not nobody's a bit strong, but I've really struggled to find examples of writing systems that are not just phonological or phonemic; they are phonetic. They try to write down everything,
Yep.
every possible sound, every possible allophone. The only one that I ever reach for is like Avestan. People ever looked at the Avestan language, ancient Iranian
I know
language,
what you mean.
because the priests needed pinpoint accuracy in reciting this language, which actually maybe wasn't their mother tongue by this point in time. Avestan takes the Aramaic script, I think it's the Aramaic version of the alphabet, and they make it super phonetically accurate. But this is not practical.
Yeah.
They're trying to write down all the possible allophones and phonemes of the Avestan language. That is the exception rather than the rule.
Yeah.
So instead, if you're going for sound, if you're basing your writing system in sound, what are the most salient properties that the inventors will pick up on, that the readers need to be there, so that they can read and write and with speed and dexterity? It doesn't need to be super phonetic. By accident, another example of this would be Chinese writing. Now, Chinese writing has a different basis.
Yeah.
It's based on meaning and function of the characters. The phonetic component is there, but it's secondary. But by kind of happenstance, because of the history of Semitic languages, all of these different languages and dialects that use Chinese characters, these languages, this speech has tended towards the monosyllabic.
Yep.
And monosyllabic suits the character-based system extremely well.
Yes.
You have a syllable the syllable is it's a syllable and also it's a morpheme at the same time. I hesitate to I have conversations about this. How do we categorize the relationship between Chinese characters and Chinese speech? It's sort of phonemo-morphological or morphophonological. It's a really interesting relationship. There's definitely the syllable is an aspect, but so is the meaning. That's also an aspect of the character.
The radicals, stuff like that.
Yeah. But regardless, it suits the one character for one morpheme / syllable extremely well. So just to think about this and design your characters accordingly. That would be the biggest principle that I can offer based on my adventures through human history and historical writing.
I like it. I like it a lot. And so I guess finally, in that sense, which say narrowing back down to say the Latin alphabet, like our modern Latin alphabet, which letter do you think has the craziest journey? Like, if you were trying to explain to an alien like the history of the Latin alphabet, which one would the alien be like, no, that can't be true? Like, well, what's the wackiest evolution out of the letters, do you think?
That's nice. That's very nice. I think if I could take the alphabet in its totality, and maybe rather than start today, start in the past, it would actually be the ancient member of the alphabet. It was the Semitic letter wow.
Yes.
Probably that's how it's pronounced. It's one letter to begin with. It stands for a w sound, unsurprisingly. It's definitely, I think we have very early examples of it, which means it's kind of one of the earliest members of the earliest form of the alphabet. So it's very, very old. Semitic languages use it for the w sound. And from this, English gets 5 letters of splitting and splitting and reborrowing and reborrowing. Maybe, do you know what? I'm going to tease your lovely viewers. I'm not going to say which ones these are. I'm going to let them go and find that out for themselves. It's not particularly obvious that from over the history of the alphabet, 5 letters today that all seem like proud, independent members of the alphabet actually have a single Semitic origin way back when. In addition to that, it might be K that I'd go for. K is my answer.
I like it.
And I will go into a bit more detail with this because it has this incredible reversal of fortune. For context, K is also one of the earliest members of the gang. I think it's a hand originally. It's kind of a hieroglyphic hand, and there's a little bit of that in the capital letter K. You have it looks like that.
Yeah, it's got
kind
the
of hand. Yeah. Bad example, but
something like that.
My fingers are not that flexible, but and it makes its way through via the important stopping points of the alphabet, like the Phoenicians. It makes its way to the ancient Greeks. It's still there in Greek today. It's Kappa. It's not gone anywhere. It's very stable as a letter. The Romans, for various reasons, get rid of it. They have the letter C for all their K purposes, and K is gone, and Q is basically also standing for a K by this point in time, and it's relegated to QU. And if you stop the clock, record scratch, pause the alphabet right now in the year 1, BC AD, take your pick, the times of Augustus Caesar.
Yeah.
You think K, that's been binned. Like so many letters of the alphabet's history, this seems to be binned, if not just now, then forever. And C is all conquering. It's the letter that Latin uses. But then Latin speech goes and keeps changing, and you have the development of not only K, but a kind of palatalized K before certain vowels. Context dependent. This is where the difference between soft and hard C comes in. And this, I would absolutely recommend to your viewers and to fellow conlangers, use something like this. Use how one letter at one point in time is super stable and super reliable, but speech leads it to become unreliable. Like the letter C, so many languages of the world today have a pretty lukewarm relationship with. It's become unreliable to the extent like it's barely there in German today. And what has risen to take its place is K. K makes this incredible resurgence. In English, it is the reliable letter for K, for the K sound. In certain languages of Europe, it is the only letter that spells the K sound. So in the local Czech language, it's a K. C is used for T, pretty logical step to take because that's kind of one of the sounds of palatalized C that emerges out of Latin. So that's perfectly in keeping. But C, for so many writing systems and offshoots of the alphabet, has become unreliable.
Yeah.
And I love that. And in its
Yep.
place, K, which was binned by the Romans, has made this great resurgence, and today is now reliable. It's been made reliable until speech changes and does something else and becomes
Yeah.
something else.
Until next time. To be continued.
Don't get cocky. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. I love it. It's a pretty good answer.
Thank you very much. I mean, it's nice. I definitely feel like I'm amongst friends here.
Yes, indeed. So I guess I gotta ask, because you know a little bit about conlangs. Have you ever made a conlang? You ever made one?
I mean, hasn't every linguist at some point in time?
Right.
It's often you might ask a linguist, "Oh no, I know, I don't do that," and they go, "Oh, but I did create my own language when I was 12." You know, that sort of thing. It's something that people might overlook, even if people who don't actually pursue it. Yeah, sure. It was something that I really got into as a teenager.
Nice.
It was something that interested me. I, of course, was interested in fantasy. There was a little bit. I think the seed was planted at the absolute earliest stage because I grew up in a completely monolingual English environment.
Yeah, me too.
The seed would have first been planted by gathered friends, Bionicle.
Yep.
Massively into Bionicle. And I will say this. Yes, okay, it is a bit of a cop-out because Bionicle is just the English alphabet made into circles. But there was a coolness to it. There was the way in which the capital letters, the gaps in the capital letters were refigured as dots. I thought that was quite cool.
Yep.
And the stop. Very good. I can't actually see a script like that working for real because nobody has time to draw a full circle for every single character.
Yeah, exactly.
I can see that being dropped quite quickly.
Yep.
So that would have planted the seed, and that seed would have then been watered and nurtured by Tolkien.
There you go.
I would just say conlanging is not something I've actively pursued as an adult because historical languages are more than enough for me. That's what I put it. I got into Indo-European and Semitic languages, and that's more than enough to be getting on with.
Oh yeah. That'll take up your time for sure. That's indeed. Yeah. I mean, for context, we had a whole rant together about Bionicle before I hit the record button. So we both know the Bionicle lore. I've explained in multiple videos that my original introduction to conlanging was from Bionicle. So it's well-known backstory here. And then and there was other small things too. Like in Club Penguin there was like a cipher code you had to learn that was based on like a tic-tac-toe board. It was called like the tic-tac-toe cipher, and it was just a cipher. It wasn't a conlang. But like 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 I thought that was like a really creative shape pattern for a cipher. And that kind of got me thinking about creating alphabets as well, stuff like that. That was around the same time as my Bionicle craze. So I was kind of being bombarded by these sort of quasi-conlangs and ciphers and things like that from a young age. And so it was unstoppable.
It's the gateway drug.
Indeed
it
is.
It all leads from there.
Indeed it is.
It's fun. It's just fun. And before you know it, you have a linguist before your eyes.
There you go. Yes, indeed. Cool. All right. Well, I didn't get to every single question, but I think I've got to get going relatively soon because we've been going for quite a while at this point.
Yep.
Yes, indeed. Yep. So this has been an amazing chat.
Likewise, I've really, really enjoyed this. I mean what I say. Like, this is all genuine smiles. I really feel like I'm amongst friends, and I do appreciate, of course, there is a massive time difference between us. So I'm chill on my end, but you have a whole day ahead of you.
Yeah, no, I gotta get to work.
I hope this has been a pleasant, very geeky start to the day for you.
Oh, for sure. And if you want to just tell the viewers where you could find your book so that people could go buy it, where would that be?
Well, with great pleasure. I really hope people do, of course, buy it because this is now my main source of income.
There you go.
I don't think it's too expensive as a book. It is intended for a mass audience. The book has been released in the US. It came out in the UK originally last October. It was released in the US in June. I believe all major retailers have it. Hopefully, independent bookshops have it as well. If your independent bookshop or your institution, your school, university would ever like to do something with me, I do a lot of public speaking in person or online. So I do hope people are aware of that I like talking and I like presenting. I'm a reliably entertaining public speaker. And I'd love to do more stuff with American bookshops. I'll get that out of the way. So the book is available in all good bookshops, because how could they not be good if they have it? And in addition to that, I'm not hard to find online. I've made it my business over the past 7 years to be as online as possible. So come talk to me, say hello, whatever floats your boat. Bluesky, the smoldering remains of Twitter, the hesitant presence on YouTube. I do have my own podcast, The Language I Love Is, which I need to restart at some point.
Nice.
And I've kind of got into Instagram and Substack in recent years because my publishers told me to.
There you go.
I'm kind of enjoying it.
I've got you on Instagram already, so yeah. I've seen you there.
Thank you. Not many followers, but I'm just like, I kind of held out against Instagram for a long time, and now I'm there. I'm like, oh, this is surprisingly fun.
Yeah, it's entertaining. It's entertaining. Very nice. And yeah,
it's a non-stop. It's a lot of linguistics videos and a lot of cat videos. So I'm happy. Okay.
There you go. Exactly. And again, if you ever wanna do a little chat on this channel again, just let me know. I'd be happy to chat with you more about Bionicle lore or any of that stuff.
Not where I expected this to go, but I'm very happy with that.
Believe me,
it's been a real pleasure.
A lot of my fans would be very happy to just listen to two people talk about Bionicle for an hour. So.
You know what? Do you know what I could? I actually could.
I could too.
This knowledge is.
I totally
This knowledge
could.
is burned deep into my brain. I know. I don't worry. I know. I can rattle off the names of the first togas and toas and turagas and everything. No problem. My knowledge gets a bit hazy when it gets to the kind of gladiatorian stage. I wasn't
me too.
so much on board for that bit. But
me too.
Everything up to Makuta ejecting the soul of Matanui.
Yep.
I was there.
Mm-hmm. Peak.
I was there, Gandalf.
That's right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I was there 3,000 years ago.
Yeah, 3,000. Oh my gosh.
Time before time.
That's right.
Oh, good time.
Good stuff. Cool. All right. Well, I'm going to sign off then and stop the recording. Well, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.